I bet you're wondering why I've gathered you here today. Well, I just want to talk, okay? So, Wuthering Heights is getting another adaptation. I think that's like the 15th or 50th at this point, something like that. Which, you know what? It makes sense. It is a classic bit of literature, you know? It was controversial for the time. A lot of the themes can still be seen as thought-provoking today. So it makes sense why it's something that people want to revisit, you know? Like when it first came out, it was definitely not it wasn't received critically. That's what I'll say. Emily's sister Charlotte Bronte even released it with her own foreword, trying to like smooth over critics to try to make it a little bit better received. Yeah, Charlotte felt compelled to smooth the way for its reception with her explanations of her sister's unself-consciousness and almost unwitting talent, because its instincts are, at heart, profoundly transgressive ones. She really just wanted to be like, hey, listen, just give it a chance, have an open heart, have an open mind, and maybe you'll discover some gothic shit that you like, okay? And it is still well loved today. It is regarded very much as a gothic classic. So, understandably, people have a lot of feelings about any adaptations, right? Like, people are going to take it very seriously because it's a classic piece. Most people, I can't say most, I mean, I feel like most people have at least discussed it because it used to be required in schools. So a lot of people have some type of experience with this book. Okay, so the criticism is definitely not surprising. And I'm a big proponent of having fun with adaptations. I don't think it's necessary to do one-for-one adaptations, but when it's something like Wuthering Heights, like you kind of have to at least show some type of understanding of the original work. I fear that might not be entirely what's happening here. This is gonna just kind of be me processing and just I want to open up a conversation. I haven't entirely decided whether or not I think it's going to be good or bad, and I probably won't until it officially comes out because I like to give everything a fair shot, okay? I might be a little worried, but I will still give it a shot, and I don't want to like finalize my decision and like fully condemn it before I have all the facts, okay? So let's just kind of talk about it. So the trailer was just released, and it's horny. It's really horny. That's the first thing that I got from it. Like, oh my god, is it horny? This feels very book talk, Wattpad, like smut, which was definitely confusing because this book, okay, I have two thoughts. So at first it's a little bit confusing because this book isn't overtly sexual, right? Like there's definitely sexual tensions, there's some like innuendo type thing, but it's not overtly sexual. That's for sure. But on one hand, I'm like, this movie is doing too much. Like this feels unnecessary, maybe a little gratuitous. But then I started thinking about it. At the time, what was said in this book was still considered quite taboo. So in a way, it does make sense for them to up the ante in order to make this adaptation taboo for our generation. It's also made by Emerald Fennell, who is known to make very sexual pieces that make you think, right? Like she's not just putting it in there to be like, ooh, she wants you to feel a little disturbed. She wants you to think about it. Like it is all part of her work. So I do kind of understand it a little bit, and I feel like there's a way for it to be done well. However, based on the trailer, I don't know if that's what's happening. It feels very much like it just wants to be a bodice ripper. So I'm a little concerned. I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna have the care taken that needs to be taken. Because I still want it to feel like a dark, like gothic piece where like it's a lot more brooding. I feel like limerence and that longing, that not quite having, is what makes this such a good book. And I feel like if you're just gonna give us all the sex immediately, it's not gonna have the same payoff, you know? Like, it's just gonna be like, oh, okay, like I already knew that was gonna happen, duh, I saw them fingering a fish in the commercial. No, what the fuck was that? Like, I knew this shit was gonna go down. Okay, so let's talk about Emerald Fennell for a second. So she worked on Saltburn and Promising Young Woman, most notably. I liked both these movies. You know, I don't think that they were like perfect movies by any means. I know a lot of people have issues, especially with Saltburn, of it not being as deep as it like tried to be, I guess, which, you know, I can't fully disagree with. I'm so sorry. But I still thought it was a really enjoyable film. It looked incredible. The score was fun. It had just like so many like very cool shots. A lot of weird stuff.
I tell you what though, folks, that's bloody nice.
But that was kind of the whole point. I thought it was still like a fun movie. And she does mention that she took inspiration from Wuthering Heights in Saltburn. Let me find this. Okay, yeah, specifically the scene where Oliver humps Felix's grave. God, see, this is like a movie like I can't talk to people about, you know, like it's like one of those movies that you're like, you should watch this, but just be prepared. Okay, but anyways, there's a scene in Wuthering Heights after. Also, spoiler warning for Wuthering Heights. I'm about to drop a big plot thing. Okay, just, I mean, I think based on the title, you would know that there's going to be spoilers, but just in case. Okay, anyways, so after Kathy dies, Heathcliff digs down to her coffin and tries to get to her. It's very clear what he's intending to do, which is to, at the very least, touch her, kiss her. So it's part of the Gothic tradition that sex and death are kind of intertwined. So that's where she kind of took her inspiration from for that scene with Felix. I don't know if I entirely understand. I mean, besides like death and like longing, like, yes, that makes sense, but I just think that Oliver and Felix's dynamic is so different from Kathy and Heathcliff. You know, the Gothic tradition of sex and death is very much there. That entirely makes sense, but I just feel like as dynamics go, it's like very different. And I think that it kind of feels like she was just kind of like, wow, I want to do something like that because Wuthering Heights, you know, why not? But it's just, I don't know, I just think it's still like a very different dynamic. It's still weird. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Heathcliff was not a fucking weirdo for doing that. He was. But that's just him. The second half of the book is not supposed to be painting Heathcliff in a good light. Like, that it is very clear. He is the villain in the second half of the book. That's also another thing. I feel like a lot of adaptations don't really focus on the second half, and they kind of just focus on like the first half, and they're like, oh, look, a tragic love story. Oh man, so sad. No, we need to remember all of the shit that Heathcliff pulls. That man is a menace. He is a menace, and we cannot forget what he did to that second generation of people. Oh my God. More incest? We already had enough. God. She definitely has a very interesting lens that she likes to tell stories through, especially focusing on the taboo, lust, revulsion, how sexual tension is kind of revulsion and desire. Like, those are the two things pulling against each other, and those are themes that I think can connect well to Wuthering Heights. I am just afraid that it's trying to appeal too much to the smut readers. That's really what I think is happening here. I think that they're like, you know who we can really get to come see this movie? The smut girlies. They're gonna love this shit. But I just hope that that isn't the main focus, because in my opinion this book is about revenge. I think that that's a more prominent theme in this book, is revenge, because Kathy and Heathcliff are both a little spiteful, okay? I saw someone say that the only reason you kind of root for them to be together is because you just want them to leave everyone else the fuck alone. So you're like, please, you two just get together.
You could fix him. I could make him worse. Let's make this man worse. I want to see what happens.
Let's get into my main concerns. So, first of all, we can't talk about this movie without talking about the casting. I think this is like beating a dead horse. I think everyone's brought this up already, but it just needs to be discussed, because the second we stop discussing it is the second that this kind of thing is okay. Okay, first of all, Heathcliff is being played by Jacob Elordi.
A white man broke in today.
A white man?
See, now that doesn't make any sense, because one of the main character traits of Heathcliff is that he is treated very badly, outcasted by society. One, because he's poor, right? Anyone can be poor, that's fine. But also because he is a person of color. Specifically, he's described as being possibly Romani. That's unclear though, because the slur is used, so there's a lot of debate about whether or not it actually meant someone of Romani descent or if it was just referring to somebody with a darker skin tone. It is unclear, but the thing that is clear is it wasn't supposed to be a white man. It wasn't supposed to be a white. He's not a white man. And the craziest thing is, I think there's only one adaptation that has actually casted a person of color. What do you mean? What do you mean? And the fact that this adaptation is coming out in 2026 and they still didn't, it's just crazy. I feel like I don't have the authority to speak on this because I can look in a mirror. I am too white to have an opinion on this. But Princess Weeks made this incredible video talking about how Heathcliff isn't white, and I think that this is like a great video to just dive into it and like really explain why it's important for him to be played as such, because otherwise it just doesn't make any sense.
Those illusionary barriers are more important than facts, which is why ultimately, while we are having this discussion, it doesn't actually matter what Heathcliff is. What matters is that because he is darker in some way, people perceive him a certain way, and that he is not white enough. Throughout Wuthering Heights, there are multiple references to Heathcliff's skin color and his assumed ethnicities and races. Here are all the examples.
Yeah, it's not mentioned once, twice, 3 times. It's mentioned a lot because clearly it was important enough to Emily Bronte for her to mention it multiple times. So you'd think one of these movie productions would think that it is also important, but I guess not. Let's just put a hot guy there. That makes more sense. I have always imagined him being really tall, so that's the one thing that Jacob Elordi has going for him, I guess. Let's also talk about Margot Robbie. Beautiful, talented, amazing. I love her, but she is like 35, which is fine. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. She's still young, but she isn't teenager young, and she doesn't look teenager young. And a big part of Kathy's character and what makes her story so tragic is that she dies as a teenager. I think she lives to be 19. Hold on, I have the whole timeline. Here we go. Okay, yeah, Catherine dies at 18. Margot Robbie does not look 18. Even in this trailer, she does not look 18 in any way, shape, or form. And so it's just gonna take me out of the story. I also don't see casting for Harriton or Linton. They have someone for Nellie. So it feels like they're not even going to tell the rest of the story. I don't know if anyone knows more about that, let me know, but I'm kind of confused. Do they plan on only telling the first half? Be honest, are they only going to do the first half? That's so annoying. Okay, now let's talk about the costumes. This is another part that I don't want to too harshly judge until it comes out, because we don't fully know the whole story yet. I feel like it could be very fun and artsy. That's what they're going for. So the costumes don't have to be the most historically accurate, as the case is with Bridgerton. I actually really like Bridgerton. I think the costuming is very fun and fits the story very well. I don't think I would like it. I don't think Bridgerton would be the same thing if it was just very historically accurate costumes. I think the fun and the whimsy adds to the storytelling in that show specifically. So I'm not going to be like super sticklery on it, but we are going to judge it. Okay, so first of all, the costume designer is Jacqueline Duran, who has done some incredible but also some really hated costume designing. So she worked on Pride and Prejudice 2005 with Keira Knightley. Super fun costuming, not historically accurate. Obviously, the hair is very very incorrect, but it's fun and it adds to the story. But it's not too much to where it takes you out of the time period that it's supposed to be set in, okay? She also did Atonement, that like iconic green dress, that was her. Then moving to some of the more negative things, she did Beauty and Beast, the live action, which was, it was fine. Like I don't feel like I don't hate that one as much as other people, but it just like wasn't exciting to me per se. The one that I did feel pretty passionate about was Little Women, the new one that came out with Florence Pugh in it. I hated those costumes. Like I like when creative liberties are taken, but with that one specifically, I love the silhouettes and the hair of that era so much, so it was just like really sad for me to see what was done to it. Especially in Little Women, because they didn't really try to like change the story in any other way. I feel like it was like kind of just the costumes were modernized for some reason, and it just, I don't know, it felt unnecessary. I think I still like the movie, but I just think the costumes were all over the place and didn't entirely make sense. It was also hard because Emma had come out pretty recently. I think Emma came out like a little bit before, but I was still stuck on those costumes being so impeccable. And that's the perfect example of a film that leaned into the historical aspect, but still kind of made it more fun and like artsy. Like you can do that and still kind of honor the historical silhouettes. So it was just really hard for me to like that one. But she also did Barbie. Barbie was great. No, she's done some amazing work, and I am not gonna judge this movie until I see it fully, but we are gonna talk about what is expected of the costume design and kind of what we are seeing so far. So let's go back to our handy dandy timeline. Yay! Okay, so our story begins in 1757 and ends around 1807. So that's a lot of time in there. We've got Regency, we've got Gothic, we've got Romance. Like there's a lot of different vibes and eras that are gonna have to be like thought about when costuming this kind of movie. Okay, let's start with the 1770s. So this was kind of a transitional period where day wear and more informal garments started to be worn. I mean, they're still quite formal, especially considering like today's standards, but it was that kind of change. So they were wearing more cottons, plain and lighter weight silks than they had in the past. I think the men's suit also became like a little bit slimmer, so that's something that I would be looking for. I think they're probably already going to do that anyways to make the men look hotter, so like that's fine. I'm sure that's already going to be a thing. This was also the time where we saw a shift from the robe à la française to the robe à la anglaise. I'm probably saying that bad, okay? I mostly read stuff, so sometimes when I'm like trying to speak about the things I read about, I'm like, ooh, I don't actually know how to say that, but so it it's basically they also replaced the big old hoop that once gave shape to dresses to just having like the panniers. Those are just like, they're a little bit smaller. I mean, still like giving that dramatic silhouette, but a little less. Still heavily trimmed, heavily ruffled, beautiful design, like flowing in the back because you have those big pleats that are kind of stitched down but then let loose to flow over the panniers. Truly a beautiful silhouette that I unfortunately don't think that we're going to get to see at all. Doesn't seem like they're going to be doing anything of the sort, so that's kind of upsetting because I think it's such a fun silhouette and I don't know why period dramas like stray away from it so much. Like, it's so fun. Look at the grade. They did it so well. Like, they made their costuming still fun, but you know they still have those classic silhouettes. Okay, so now we move into 1780s. The 1780s were similar to the 1770s, how it was like transitioning to being more informal wear. So it was just like a little bit more casual. We're kind of just getting more and more casual as they go on. So they still had like chemise underneath, and then it would be like a coat with like a contrasting petticoat. But let's talk about like wedding dresses at this time because that's going to be the most like crucial thing to happen during this time period in the film. Okay, so first of all, she probably would not have been in a white wedding dress. That was something that was not popularized until like 40 years later with Queen Victoria. Before that, women truly just wore like their best dress. That was kind of the vibe. I mean, obviously, wealthier women would have had a dress made for the occasion. So she potentially would have had a dress made because she is like wealthier, marrying a wealthier man. But for the most part, it's not going to be like a white dress, so that already doesn't really make sense. The one thing that I saw that did kind of bug me a little bit was like the big old like hoopy crinoline situation underneath. Crinolines weren't invented until like the 1850s. So that is just wrong. That's just wrong and it doesn't make any sense. I do love this article here from The Dreamstress. It kind of goes through 18th century wedding dresses. So white dresses did become a trend, but not yet as far as like in the story we're talking about. But I like that it shows some examples of some wedding dresses that would have been worn at the time. She could have worn a white dress. I'm not saying it's impossible, and I actually don't fully hate that the dress is white because I think that having a white wedding dress connects to a modern audience. So honestly, I'm not fully offended by that. I think that there's potential there to make it fun. But I'm just showing you the historical context. Like, here we go. This is a 1780s wedding dress that happens to be white. Okay, okay. But it still has that fun silhouette. Like, we could have done this. It would have been so fun. So, all this being said, I don't hate the costumes, and I think that there is potential for them to be fun. I think that they just need to, well, I guess it's too late. I think they've already probably made all the costumes and like probably pretty much shot everything, so I think it's too late for them to fix anything, so I don't think any of this matters. So far the costumes don't look perfect. I don't think I'm super excited about them. But I think that if the quirkiness can add to the story, it can be very fun. So I'm not going to count them off yet. I'm just kind of adding that historical context so we have something to compare it with, okay? Because this is a period piece at the end of the day, so I would expect to compare it to that time period, okay? Like, that's just, I'm allowed to do that. But I am not going to make rash judgments based on it either. I'm going to give them some room to be creative, and maybe it'll be fun. To kind of conclude this, though, I really do hope that they stick to the gothic vibe and they really focus on revenge and obsession, and they don't just try to make this smutty and fun for book talk, okay? I just really hope they approach it with the care that this story deserves. One final thing I am worried about is the color grading. Why is it seems way too bright. Like, this is supposed to take place in the moors. Why is it so bright? It's supposed to be like dark, depressing, gothic vibe. Like, this is like bright. I don't know. Let's see. Wuthering Heights, starring Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, featuring Charlie XCX on the soundtrack, is kind of like the Matcha Dubai Chocolate Labubu of film.
And that is correct. I'm excited though. I love when pop is added over period pieces. I think it's fun. I am forever a fan of the Marie Antoinette adaptation with the I want candy scene. That's so fun. Okay, so I'm not against that. I think it's gonna be a fun time. But it is kind of funny that all these things are getting thrown in. Like it does really feel like they're just trying to get like a TikTok moment. But I'm not counting them out just yet. They have potential. With all that being said, I am still excited to see it. I hope that they just stay true to the source material at least a little bit. I think it's fine to have a little bit of fun, but we need to remember some of the original themes, revenge. I want to see that jealousy. I want to see that longing. I want to see that all consuming want for revenge. Like, I want to see all of that. I don't want Heathcliff's crimes to be minimized just because he's hot Jacob Elordi, okay?
What kind of girls do you prefer?
My wife.
What kind of girl do you like? John's wife?
These are not supposed to be the most likable characters, and I don't want them to forget about that because they are hot people that people like, okay? I don't know. We'll see. I'm still kind of excited. I love a period piece, even if it's bad. I'll still watch it. Until next time. Bye bye.